All right, let's dive into a really fascinating declassified account from the absolute peak of the Cold War. A time of atomic tests, global tension, and right in the middle of all of that, in the vast Pacific Ocean, something happened that was completely off the books. So this is the big question, isn't it? This is the core mystery we're going to try and unpack today. During one of the most intense times in modern history, a totally routine military operation stumbles upon something that, well, it defied all explanation. What follows is a puzzle, and it's pieced together from first-hand accounts and a whole lot of official secrecy. So, first things first, let's get some context. This whole thing went down during something called Operation Dominic. The U.S. was basically setting off nukes high up in the atmosphere over the Pacific to see what would happen. This wasn't some sci-fi movie plot. This was a very real, very powerful series of military exercises. Okay, let's set the scene. For the sailors on these ships, this was probably just another day at the office, another day in a long series of tests. But on this particular day, a totally routine mission was about to take a turn that was, well, anything but ordinary. Our main witness, the guy whose testimony is the bedrock of this whole incident, is a man named David Noble Whitecrow. He was a sailor in the U.S. Navy, and on that day, he was right there on the deck of the USS Finch, a naval destroyer that was escorting the whole operation. So, try to picture this. The bomb goes off. For safety, almost everybody is ordered to get below deck. But then, an officer comes and handpicks David and about a dozen other guys. Their job? Simple and super strict. Stand on the starboard side, face the horizon, and do not talk. Not a word. The tension on that deck must have been absolutely off the charts. And it's from that exact spot, standing in total silence, that David Whitecrow and those other sailors saw something that would stick with them for the rest of their lives. So in his own words, after being ordered to look just a little bit off the starboard bow, he saw it. And we're not talking about a little dot in the sky or a weird light, no. This was, and I'm quoting here, a huge cigar-shaped object, and it was heading right for them. It was big, and it was close. Now, to really wrap your head around this, get a load of the scale we're talking about. The USS Finch was over 300 feet long. That's a big ship. But the object David saw, he figured it was about the length of 2 football fields. It would have absolutely dwarfed his own vessel. He said it was moving at a pretty good clip, at least 400 miles per hour, and it had this strange blue glow coming from the back. But then, and this is the part that just breaks your brain, as it got right in front of the ship, it did something impossible. It went from that speed to, in his words, gone in an instant. I mean, that kind of acceleration, it just shouldn't be possible. But David actually seeing this thing was only the beginning of the story. He would find out later that he and his shipmates weren't the only ones who tracked this thing, and the story was about to get a whole lot deeper. And look, this wasn't just some eyewitness thing that could be dismissed. Oh no. The radar techs on the ship confirmed it. They had tracked a massive object, and it had a serious heat signature. On top of that, pilots who were in the air reported seeing the same thing go down and crash right into the ocean. And what came next? Secrecy. David was immediately debriefed and forced to sign a non-disclosure agreement. He couldn't talk about it for 20 years. So for 2 whole decades, David just had to sit on this story. But then, years later, a completely random encounter while he was stationed at Guantanamo Bay would add this terrifying and, frankly, bizarre second act to the whole affair. He meets this senior Navy diver, and in a quiet, private conversation, the diver starts telling him this unbelievable story. He claimed he was part of the top secret mission that got sent to salvage the exact same object David saw crash into the Pacific all those years ago. So, this diver's team, they had one job: find whatever it was that went into the ocean that day and bring it back. For the first look, he actually volunteered to go down by himself. Classic diving bell helmet, the whole old school setup. He starts his descent into the pitch black darkness of the Pacific. As he's going down, he doesn't see anything, but then he feels his feet touch something solid. And it takes him a second to realize he wasn't on the ocean floor. He was standing on the object itself. And the way he described it, it's just bizarre. He said the surface felt like a gigantic sponge, and it had these compartments that looked, well, organic. And then he reached out to touch it, and his hand didn't hit a solid wall. It went right through it. The experience apparently terrified him so badly, he He lost control of his bladder right there in his suit. So they haul him back up to the surface, and he can barely even explain what he saw. But here's the strangest part of all. When the full salvage team went back the very next day to the same spot, the object was gone, just vanished. And tragically, David later found out that this diver, right before he was about to retire, died in what was officially called a freak suspicious accident. So, okay, we've got this absolutely incredible, multi-layered story. It's compelling, it's spooky, but we also have to look at it with a critical eye. And there's one part of that diver's story that creates a major problem. You see, the entire second half of this story, everything the diver said, it all hinges on his claim that he stood on that object on the ocean floor. But the question is, was that even possible? Especially with the kind of diving tech they had back in 1962. Well, the ocean around Johnston Atoll, where this all went down, gets deep, and it gets deep fast. Even if you're just a mile or so off the coast, you are looking at depths of over 1,000 feet. And that right there is the big conflict in this story. A depth of 1,000 feet, probably a lot more, it would have been completely unsurvivable for a diver back then. The immense, crushing pressure of the water would have been fatal. It seems physically impossible. So this puts us in a really tough spot. On one hand, you have David Whitecrow's first-hand account. The guy is a highly credible military witness. All the details about Operation Dominic, the ship, the timeline, it all checks out. But on the other hand, you have the diver's story, which is secondhand, mind you, and it has this one huge detail, the depth, that seems to completely break the laws of physics. So we're left with this incredible puzzle. Did the diver maybe exaggerate his story? Is it possible David misremembered the details after all those years? Or is there some other explanation we just can't see? We've got a credible witness, a truly compelling story, and one detail that seems absolutely impossible. It really makes you wonder, what really happened out there in the Pacific all those years ago? That part remains a mystery.